The universe is not made of particles, or fields, or strings. The universe is interference patterns, all the way down. Wow. Okay, we're starting right in the deep end today with this incredible quote from our source material. What we're actually unpacking here is a set of incredibly dense, mathematically formalized proofs written in lean code. And they aren't just playing with numbers, they are making a massive, fundamental claim about the absolute fabric of reality itself. Welcome back to the Explainer. So today we are taking these hardcore mathematical proofs and translating them into a journey. We're going to start way down at the absolute microscopic limit, the quantum foam, and build our way all the way up to cosmic architecture. We're even going to see how these exact same physical laws govern human consciousness and poetry. It's a totally wild ride, so stick with me as we literally build a universe from the ground up.
Section 1. The price of quantum replication. The thermodynamics of copying. Let's get right into it.
Okay, first things first, we need to establish the baseline rules of reality's accounting system. Before we can start building galaxies or minds, how does the universe handle basic information and energy? Notice the formal lean code here. This is the mathematical proof of what the source calls the cloning gap. Essentially, the universe runs a ridiculously strict ledger. Absolutely nothing comes for free. If you want to copy a state, a system, or even just a tiny piece of information, the universe demands a payment. And that currency? It's entropy. This comparison brilliantly illustrates the massive shift from our everyday tech to quantum physics. Think about classical computing. You copy a file on your laptop, and we basically think of it as free, right? Zero structural debt. But in the quantum realm, oh, it's a totally different story. Replicating any state generates an immediate, permanent debt of entropy. You just can't clone a state and keep the score balanced. The deficit is the entropy you have to pay. The source actually links this to the CAP theorem in distributed systems, where replicating data across nodes costs coordination, and to Landauer's principle, which tells us that just erasing data literally releases physical heat into the room. Mind-blowing, right?
The text formalizes this whole framework as cost algebra. You can think of it as the categorical version of the second law of thermodynamics. To put it simply, if you clone a state of energy E, you are going to generate exactly E quanta of entropy. No way around it. You literally cannot get something for nothing. Because of this strict accounting, the universe is inherently biased against perfect, costless replication. It forces the cosmos to be hyper-efficient with its structural building blocks.
Moving on to Section 2, the fifth fundamental force, interference as the architect of stability.
So here's the obvious question. If entropy is always going up and energy is constantly dispersing, how does anything solid actually exist? Well, looking at this formal proof, we get our answer: interference. But guys, the source material is making a radically bold claim here. It says interference isn't just some secondary side effect of waves crashing into each other. No, it is explicitly defined as the fifth fundamental force, right up there with gravity, electromagnetism, and the strong and weak nuclear forces. It's not emergent, it is fundamentally structurally load-bearing. To see how this works, the source breaks reality's physics down into 5 specific actions. You've got the fork force, which spreads things out and creates multiplicity; the race force, which contracts and drives up entropy; the fold force, which compresses and integrates; and the vent force, which just disperses. But here is the real kicker. Without that fifth force, interference, those other 4 would just drift off into a void. Nothing would stick around. Interference actively collides these paths to create standing waves. It is literally the only thing providing the stability needed for any persistent structure to survive. Let's zoom out a bit to really appreciate the scale of this. This exact same mechanism of colliding waves cascades seamlessly across every single dimension of reality. Check this out. At the microscopic Planck scale, it's the quantum foam. Move up to the quantum scale, and it's the wave-particle duality we all know from the famous double-slit experiment. Zoom way out to the galactic scale, the spiral arms of our galaxies are actually interference patterns of orbiting bodies, literally standing density waves. And at the massive cosmological scale, gravitational waves are just the interference of space-time itself. There's just no escaping this fifth force. It's everywhere. Okay, part 3, the cosmic noise spectrum, translating forces into frequencies. If we take another step back, we can start viewing these cascading structural forces not just as physical things, but as actual frequencies. The source describes a 10-dimensional space called the aeon manifold, where all these frequencies are vibrating and interfering all at once. And it translates these architectural frequencies into a noise spectrum, assigning specific dimensional levels to different types of physical persistence. It actually maps these to something it calls a poetry lattice, where shifting noise colors act as the actual transition language of reality. I mean, how poetic is that? Just look at how this spectrum maps out the evolution of reality. Down at the baseline, we have brown noise, assigned a gnosis number of 1. Think of this as our everyday reality, ordered, correlated, totally driven by memory. But then it steps up to pink noise at number 3, which is chaotic, self-similar, right on the edge of critical mass. Up from there is white noise at number 4, which is pure gnosis, maximum entropy, total chaos. And then finally, we hit the absolute peak, quantum noise. Now, the magic number here, the absolutely crucial point, is 12. In this framework, 12 represents that quantum noise we just talked about. It's the fundamental cosmic frequency. And notice the math here. It is exactly 3 times the power of standard gnosis, which was at 4. The proofs show that this state of metagnosis is essentially a state of absolute cosmic awareness and transcendence. It sits right at the very, very top of the extended noise ledger. Which brings us to Section 4, the Peruvian architect principle, cosmic fulcrum necessity. So how do these frequencies physically construct the world we live in? The source draws this profoundly beautiful parallel to ancient Incan stone masonry. Just read this quote: "The arch cannot stand without its keystone, and the keystone cannot exist without the forces that shape it." That is the core truth right there. The math explicitly establishes that cosmic fulcrum points are architecturally necessary. Reality is literally built like a stone arch. The entire cosmic noise spectrum relies on these critical balance points locking together under immense pressure. If they don't, the whole structure just completely collapses into the void. We can actually use the source code to build this arch step by step. First, you have the foundation of physical reality, which runs from level 0 up to 10. But to reach the capstone at level 12, that transcendent metagnosis we were just marveling at, you need a bridge. You absolutely need the keystone, which sits right at level 11. Without it, the math is blunt. No structural connection can occur. It's only after that capstone is placed that the arch can support the spire, reaching all the way up to the ultimate quantum extension at level 27. The math reveals the actual mechanics of this so beautifully. You've got an upward tension force pulling from the foundation at level 10, adding 1, and simultaneously a downward compression force pushing from the capstone at level 12, subtracting 1. These two immense cosmic forces collide perfectly at exactly 11. This massive collision, this constructive interference, is exactly what creates the keystone. The forces shape the keystone, and in turn, the keystone allows the entire universe to stand. It's a perfect loop. Finally, Section 5, polysemy, as multiple waves, interference patterns in the mind. All right, let's bring all these massive cosmic physics back down to Earth, right into our own human experience. Because the source proves this isn't just about galaxies or quantum foam, it applies to language and consciousness itself. The mathematics show that semantic meaning behaves exactly like wave physics. Seriously, take a word like bank. It could mean a place that holds your money or the side of a river. In your mind, those are 2 distinct standing waves. A literal meaning is just a low-frequency, singular standing wave, very direct. But a metaphor, the math argues a metaphor is literally the constructive interference of 2 overlapping conceptual frequencies. And when a word is ambiguous and your brain kind of stalls out trying to understand it, that's a destructive lock. The 2 wave patterns are just refusing to collapse. Which leaves us with a pretty wild final question to ponder. We've seen that from the stripped entropy ledgers of quantum copying to the massive cosmic arches holding up the universe, right down to the metaphors we use to talk to each other, everything is driven by mathematical wave mechanics. Literally everything is interference. So, if your words and thoughts are just standing waves in semantic space, what does that make your own mind? Is your consciousness itself just the ultimate interference pattern waiting to be resolved? It is an absolutely fascinating way to look at reality. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep wondering, keep questioning, and I'll catch you next time.